I used to think betrayal was something that came like a thief in the night. Sudden, unexpected, leaving only devastation in its wake. But I was wrong. The worst betrayal doesn't sneak up on you. It walks right up, looks you in the eye, and dares you to do something about it. That's exactly what happened to me. It was a regular evening, or at least I thought it was. I had just finished fixing a leaky faucet in the bathroom, my hands still damp, when I heard my wife, Bernice, call my name from the living room. Her voice had that light, teasing lilt she used when she was in a playful mood. For a moment, I thought nothing of it. I wiped my hands on a towel and made my way toward her, expecting some random story about her day or maybe a complaint about the neighbor's dog barking again. Instead, I walked straight into a moment that would change my life forever. Bernice was standing in the middle of the living room, her coat draped over one arm, her purse slung over her shoulder. She looked like she was about to leave, but she wasn't rushing. No, she was standing there with a smug little smirk, as if she had all the time in the world. "I'm going on a date," she said casually, tilting her head as if she were testing my reaction. "Try not to be too jealous." First, I thought she was joking. I even let out a short laugh, waiting for her to crack a smile and roll her eyes, tell me she was messing with me. But the seconds dragged on, and her smirk never faded. Something in my chest tightened. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. "What? You heard me," she said. Adjusting the strap of her purse like this was just another night out with friends. "I met someone, and I think it's time I explore what makes me happy." "You always say you want me to be happy, don't you?" My fingers curled into fists at my sides. "Not out of anger. No, not yet." It was something else. Something worse. That creeping realization that the ground beneath me had just shifted, and I had no idea where I stood anymore. I took a slow breath. "So, let me get this straight," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "You're telling me, your husband, that you're going out on a date with another man, and you expect me to just what? Be okay with that?" She laughed. Actually laughed like I was the one being ridiculous. "Oh, come on, Otis. Don't be so dramatic." She rolled her eyes and moved toward the door. "I didn't think you'd be this uptight about it. We've been married for a while now. Things change. People change. It's not like I'm asking for a divorce." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Not like she was asking for a divorce. Then what the hell was she asking for? My permission? My blessing? I felt something cold settle in my stomach. A slow, creeping realization. This wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment decision. She had thought this through, planned it, and she had fully expected me to just accept it. That was the part that burned the most. She reached for the doorknob, still carrying that smug expression, like she had already won whatever twisted game she was playing. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. I took a slow step forward, watching as she hesitated for the first time. "Wait," I said. My voice was quiet, steady. "Before you go." Bernice raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "What?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. With one smooth motion, I tapped the screen and turned it toward her. She blinked. The smirk wavered because right there, clear as day, was a screenshot of her text messages with him. And that was just the beginning. The moment her eyes landed on the screen, the color drained from her face. That arrogant little smirk was gone. The amusement in her eyes was replaced with something closer to shock. Maybe even fear. I didn't say a word. I let her read. Let her see every word she thought was safely hidden. "Last night was amazing, baby. Can't wait for round 2. He's clueless, isn't he?" Bernice swallowed hard, her hand tightening around the strap of her purse. For a split second, I saw something in her expression, a flicker of panic, but she masked it quickly. Where did you get that?" Her voice wasn't as steady as before. I tilted my head, pretending to think. "Oh, technology is a funny thing. You'd be surprised what syncs up when someone gets a little too comfortable using the family plan." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. That silence, that hesitation, it was all I needed. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "So, let me get this straight. You waltzed in here, acting all high and mighty, expecting me to sit here like a fool while you went on your little date. Meanwhile, you've been sneaking around behind my back, texting some guy like I wouldn't find out." Her jaw clenched, and just like that, her expression shifted. The guilt, the shock, it vanished in an instant, replaced by something colder. "You're overreacting," she snapped, folding her arms across her chest. "It's just a bit of fun. You act like I murdered someone." I let out a slow, humorless chuckle. "Oh, that's rich. Fun. That's what we're calling this." I shook my head, exhaling through my nose. "You know what's funny, Bernice? I wasn't even suspicious. Not really. Not until you opened your mouth tonight." Her brow furrowed. I smirked. "If you hadn't been so eager to rub it in my face, I wouldn't have even checked." A muscle in her jaw twitched. She hated that. Hated knowing that she was the one who gave herself away. I glanced back down at my phone, scrolling through the messages. Let's see. "I love how he thinks I'm still working late. If only he knew I was getting exactly what I need elsewhere." I let out a low whistle. "Damn, that one stings a little." Her face twisted in irritation. "I don't owe you an explanation." "No, you don't," I admitted. "But you do owe me some honesty. So tell me, Bernice, how long? How long have you been sneaking around? Playing house with someone else while I was here being the fool?" She pressed her lips together, staring at me like she was calculating her next move. Then, with an exasperated sigh, she finally said it. "About 6 months. I shouldn't have been surprised. I really shouldn't have. But 6 months. That was half a year of lies. Of coming home to me every night with a smile. Of acting like everything was normal while she was out doing God knows what with some other guy. And the worst part? She didn't even look sorry." I let out a slow breath, gripping the phone a little tighter. "And you didn't think to, I don't know, end things before jumping into bed with someone else?" She scoffed. "Oh, come on, Otis. You and I both know we've been in a rut for a while now. I was just what?" I cut her off, my voice sharper now. "Just biding your time, keeping me around as a backup plan." She rolled her eyes, her frustration growing. "You're so dramatic. It's not like I was leaving you. I just needed something different." I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around the sheer audacity of it all. She had stood in front of me, bold as day, and told me she was going on a date, thinking I'd just accept it, thinking I'd just let her go. And now that she was caught, she had the nerve to act like I was the one making a big deal out of nothing. I felt something shift inside me then, something cold and final. "You know what, Bernice?" I said quietly, slipping my phone back into my pocket. "You're right. You should go on your date." Her head snapped up, eyes narrowing slightly. "What?" I shrugged. "You already got all dressed up for it. Would be a shame to waste the effort." For the first time, she looked uncertain, like she didn't quite trust my reaction. "So you're not mad?" "Oh, I'm furious," I admitted, letting out a humorless chuckle. "But I've decided I'm done wasting my energy on someone who clearly doesn't respect me." She hesitated. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out what my angle was. I walked over to the front door, reached for the handle, and pulled it open. Then I stepped aside, motioning toward it. "Go ahead," I said smoothly. "Go on your date, Bernice. Enjoy yourself." She stared at me, then at the open doorway. For a moment, she actually looked hesitant, like she had expected a fight, expected me to beg, to argue, to do something that would make her feel powerful. Instead, I had given her exactly what she wanted. And judging by the look on her face, she hated it. But she was stubborn, too stubborn to back down now. With a sharp huff, she straightened her shoulders, adjusted her purse, and stormed past me without another word. The sound of her heels echoed down the porch steps. I waited until I heard her car start, until I saw the headlights disappear down the street. Then, slowly, I shut the door, locked it, and smiled. Because while she was off playing her little game, I had already started planning my next move. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed door, listening to the silence settle around me. It should have felt empty. It should have felt like some great weight had crashed down on me. suffocating me under the sheer absurdity of what had just happened. But instead, I felt something else entirely. Clarity. Bernice was gone. Off to her date. Off to live whatever fantasy she had convinced herself was better than the life we had built together. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't the one left waiting, wondering, second-guessing. I exhaled, running a hand over my jaw, then turned and made my way to the kitchen. If she thought she had the upper hand here, she was dead wrong. I leaned against the counter, my mind racing. The way she had looked at me before she left, it wasn't just arrogance. It was expectation. She had wanted me to react. She had wanted some kind of outburst, something to validate whatever twisted justification she had come up with for betraying me. But I hadn't given her that satisfaction. And judging by the flicker of hesitation in her eyes before she walked out the door, that had shaken her more than anything I could have said. I grabbed a glass from the cabinet and poured myself some water, taking a slow sip as I forced my thoughts to settle. There were two ways this could go. I could sit here, wallow in anger, let it consume me, let it dictate my next steps. Or I could play the smarter. I chose the latter, because Bernice wasn't just cheating on me. She was playing a game. She had made her move, expecting me to crumble under the weight of it. But she had underestimated just how well I could play, too. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling past the messages I had already read. The ones she had been careless enough to leave synced to our shared account. The ones that gave me a front-row seat to the ridiculous fantasy world she was living in. Then I found it. A reservation confirmation for a high-end restaurant just across town. Classy, expensive, the kind of place she had insisted was too extravagant for us to ever go to together. But apparently it was just fine for whoever this mystery man was. I let out a quiet chuckle, shaking my head. She really thought she was untouchable, didn't she? She really thought she could parade around behind my back and that I would never be the wiser. But she had made one crucial mistake. She had assumed I wouldn't fight back. I checked the time. If she had left when she did, she would be getting there right about now. Settling in, ordering a drink, flashing that same smug little smile at the poor fool she thought was an upgrade from me. I grabbed my keys. If Bernice wanted to play games, I was about to show her just how well I could keep up. The drive to the restaurant was quiet. Too quiet. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel as I navigated the streets, my mind flipping through every possible way this could play out. Was she expecting me to call? To blow up her phone with messages demanding answers? Maybe. And that was exactly why I didn't. She was so sure she had me pegged. So sure she knew exactly how I'd react. But I had already proven her wrong once tonight, and I had every intention of doing it again. I pulled into the parking lot of the restaurant and cut the engine, my gaze sweeping over the line of cars near the entrance. I didn't know what kind of guy she was seeing, but I knew Bernice. She had a type. She liked a certain level of flash, a certain kind of arrogance that made her feel like she was upgrading her life. And sure enough, after a few moments of scanning the lot, my eyes landed on a sleek, black sports car parked near the front. That had to be him. I leaned back against my seat, exhaling slowly. I could feel the tension settling in my shoulders, the weight of reality pressing in on me. This wasn't just some passing fling. This wasn't a mistake she had made in a moment of weakness. This was calculated, planned. She had been seeing this guy for months, sneaking around behind my back, feeding me lies while she built some fantasy life on the side. And yet, she had still come home to me every night, still pretended like I was enough, until she got bored of the act. I glanced toward the entrance just as the door swung open, and there she was. Bernice stepped outside, her heels clicking against the pavement, her arm casually looped through another man's. He was exactly what I had expected. Tall, well-dressed, exuding the kind of confidence that came from having just enough money to think he was better than everyone else. But the real kicker? She was laughing. Not the polite, forced laugh she used at dinner parties. Not the awkward chuckle she gave when she wasn't really listening. No, this was real. Genuinely amused. Genuinely enjoying herself like I had never even existed. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles going white. But I didn't move. Not yet. Instead, I watched. I watched as she leaned into him, as he opened the passenger door for her like some kind of Prince Charming, as she settled into the seat like she had done it 100 times before. Then, finally, as the car pulled out of the lot, I let out a slow breath and reached for my phone. I had been holding on to hope. Some small, stupid part of me had wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was salvageable. That maybe she had made a mistake. That maybe there was a piece of her that still cared. But that had been my answer. She wasn't coming home tonight, and she didn't think I would do a damn thing about it. I stared down at my phone, my mind made up. If Bernice wanted to throw our marriage away like it meant nothing, I was going to show her just how much nothing I had left to give her. And by the time I was done, she was going to realize exactly what she had lost. I sat there in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers ached. The taillights of that sleek black car disappeared down the road, taking my wife and whatever remained of my old life with it. For a long moment, I just stared at the empty parking lot in front of me, trying to process what I had just seen. Not that I needed to. It was pretty damn clear. Bernice wasn't hesitating. She wasn't second-guessing herself. She wasn't in the middle of some emotional crisis, torn between the man she had built a life with and the fantasy she had been chasing behind my back. No, she was all in, laughing, leaning into him, climbing into his car without a care in the world, like I had never even mattered. A strange kind of numbness settled over me. Maybe this was the moment when most guys would explode. Maybe I should have been throwing my car door open, charging after them, causing a scene right in the middle of the street. But what good would that do? What would that change? Nothing. And if Bernice had taught me anything tonight, it was that I had already lost. At least that's what she thought. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head, then reached for my phone. I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over one name in particular. I hadn't spoken to this person in a while, not because of any bad blood, just life pulling us in different directions. But if there was anyone who could help me make sense of this mess, it was them. I hit the call button. 2 rings. 3. Then, a familiar voice answered. Didn't expect to hear from you tonight. What's up? I hesitated for a split second, then sighed. I need a place to crash for the night. There was a pause on the other end. Everything okay? I let out a dry, humorless chuckle. Not even a little. The voice on the other end shifted, concern creeping in now. You want to talk about it? Not over the phone, I muttered. But yeah, I think I do. Another pause. Then, doors open. Get here whenever. I nodded even though they couldn't see me. Appreciate it. I hung up, staring at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. I didn't even recognize myself anymore. The drive to my friend's place was quiet, but my thoughts were anything but. Every red light, every turn, every empty stretch of road. It was just more time for my mind to replay the last few hours on an endless loop. Bernice walking into the living room, smug as ever. Her words slicing through me like a blade. I'm going on a date. Try not to be too jealous. Then the texts, the dinner, him. And finally, the sight of her climbing into that car, her laughter echoing in my head long after she was gone. By the time I pulled up to the small apartment complex, my jaw was clenched so tight it hurt. I killed the engine and stepped out, making my way up the stairs to the 2nd floor. Before I could even knock, the door swung open, and there stood my old friend, Wendell. He took one look at me and frowned. Damn, man, you look like hell. I let out a breath, running a hand through my hair. Yeah, feels about right. He stepped aside, motioning me in. Come on, got some beer in the fridge. Unless you want something stronger. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of cheap air freshener and takeout hitting me. It had been a while since I'd been here, but not much had changed. Same beat-up couch. Same TV that probably should have been upgraded years ago. Same half-empty bookshelf filled with a mix of old college textbooks and random DVDs. It was a mess, but it was real. And right now, that's what I needed. I sank onto the couch as Wendell walked into the kitchen, grabbing 2 beers from the fridge before tossing one my way. I caught it, twisting off the cap without a word. For a moment, neither of us said anything. So, You going to tell me what's going on? Wendell asked, settling into the chair across from me. I stared at the floor for a beat, then let out a slow breath. She's cheating on me. Wendell's eyebrows shot up. Bernice. No, my other wife. I deadpanned. His lips pressed into a thin line. Okay, fair. But damn, man. You're serious. I took a long sip of my beer before answering. Dead serious. She didn't even try to hide it. Walked right up to me and said she was going on a date like it was the most normal thing in the world. Wendell blinked. She told you? Oh yeah. Smiled while she did it too. He let out a low whistle, shaking his head. Man, I knew she was a piece of work, but that's another level. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. Yeah, well, apparently she's been seeing this guy for months. Got real all comfortable, thinking I'd never catch on. Wendell took a sip of his beer, studying me. So, what's your move? I exhaled. That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? She thinks she's in control, I muttered, mostly to myself. Thinks she's got everything all figured out. But she doesn't. Wendell raised an eyebrow. Meaning? I leaned back against the couch, tapping my fingers against the bottle in my hand. Meaning? She expects me to sit at home, devastated, waiting for her to come back like nothing happened. I looked up, meeting his gaze. I'm not going to give her that. For the first time since I got here, Wendell smirked. Now that I like the sound of. I took another slow sip of my beer, my mind already working. Bernice had played her hand. Now it was my turn. I sat on Wendell's couch for a long time, rolling the empty beer bottle between my hands. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the occasional sound of a car passing outside or the distant hum of his neighbor's TV through the thin apartment walls. It should have felt suffocating, but honestly, it was the first moment of real clarity I'd had all night. I wasn't at home waiting for Bernice to return from her date like some clueless husband with no idea what was going on. I wasn't blowing up her phone, begging for answers. I wasn't driving myself crazy with why she did this or how I hadn't seen it coming. No, I was here. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't playing by her rules. Wendell leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. So, what now? That was the question, wasn't it? What now? Because it wasn't just about catching her. I had already done that. It wasn't even about revenge, at least not in the way most guys would probably want it. Smashing her car, throwing her stuff on the lawn, calling up some lawyer to take her for everything she had. No, that wasn't my style. That wasn't what she expected from me. And that was exactly why I had to do something else. I exhaled, setting the bottle down on the coffee table. I need to go home. Wendell frowned. You sure about that? You could crash here if you need more time. I appreciated the offer, but I shook my head. Nah, I need to be there when she gets back. He hesitated, clearly debating whether to argue, then finally nodded. All right, but just don't do anything stupid. I let out a dry chuckle, grabbing my keys. Not my style. I left before he could respond. The drive home felt different. The weight of everything had shifted, but not in the way I had expected. It wasn't a crushing kind of pain, the kind that made it hard to breathe. It wasn't even anger, not really. It was something calmer, sharper, like my brain had finally caught up with what my heart had known for a long time. This wasn't the first betrayal. It was just the first one she had stopped trying to hide. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house was still dark. Good. I walked inside, flipping on the lights, and let my eyes sweep over the living room. The same couch we had picked out together. The framed photos on the walls, ones she had insisted on printing, arranging, making our life look like something solid, something built to last. It was all a lie. And that was fine because I wasn't going to pretend anymore either. I moved through the house, my movements steady. I wasn't packing up my things, not yet. I wasn't throwing hers out either. That wasn't the kind of message I wanted to send. No, this was about something else entirely. This was about letting her know that I wasn't the same man she had walked out on earlier tonight. And when she walked back in, she was going to realize that real fast. It was just after 2 o'clock in the morning when I heard the front door creak open. I didn't move, didn't look up. I just sat there in the armchair by the window, my fingers resting against the armrest, my expression unreadable as Bernice stepped inside. She froze the second she saw me. For the first time since this whole mess started, she was the one caught off guard. "Otis," she said slowly, closing the door behind her. She was still wearing the same dress, her makeup slightly smudged, her hair not as perfect as when she had left. "What are you doing up?" I tilted my head slightly. "Waiting. For you." Her fingers tightened around the strap of her purse. "For me?" I didn't answer. She let out a nervous laugh, stepping farther into the room. "You didn't have to do that. I told you where I was going. You didn't have to." "You think I'm stupid?" My voice was calm. Too calm. Her smile faltered. "What?" I stood up, moving slowly, watching as her eyes darted to my every movement. She was nervous. Not because she was afraid of me. No, I wasn't that kind of man. But because for the first time, she wasn't sure what I was thinking. And that terrified her. "I saw you," I said, taking a step forward. "I saw you leave that restaurant. I saw you climb into his car." Bernice's lips parted slightly, like she was about to say something, but she stopped herself. "Smart move." I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. "You really thought I wouldn't follow up on this? That I'd just sit here like a damn idiot, waiting for you to come home with some excuse?" Her fingers twitched against her purse. "Otis, No." I cut in, my voice firm. "You don't get to talk your way out of this one. Not this time." Silence stretched between us. Then finally, she let out a slow breath and straightened her shoulders. "So what now?" There it was. That same smug little challenge in her tone, like she still thought she was holding the cards. I smirked. "Now? Now you go upstairs, get some sleep, and tomorrow morning, you'll see exactly what now looks like." Her brows furrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. I just stepped aside, motioning toward the stairs. "Go on. You wanted your date? Hope it was worth it. Because after tonight, everything changes." She hesitated. For the first time all night, she actually looked worried. Good. She should be. Because she had no idea what was coming next. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Bernice stood there for a long moment, eyes darting between me and the staircase. Her fingers were still gripping her purse strap like it was some kind of lifeline. She wasn't used to this. Wasn't used to me being this calm, this unreadable. She had expected a fight. She had expected yelling, accusations, maybe even tears. But she hadn't expected silence. And she sure as hell hadn't expected me to look at her like she was just another stranger in my house. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out what my angle was, trying to decide whether to push me or let it go. But in the end, she must have realized she wasn't going to get anything out of me tonight, because without another word, she turned and made her way up the stairs. I listened to her footsteps, the sound of the bedroom door clicking shut behind her. Then I exhaled slowly, rolling my shoulders back as I let my mind settle. I had done what I needed to do tonight. I had set the stage, let her know without saying too much that she had lost control of the situation. Now all I had to do was wait for morning. And that's when she'd see what I really had planned. I barely slept. Not because I was angry, not because I was hurt, but because my mind was too busy piecing everything together, lining up every moment, every conversation, every lie Bernice had told me over the past few months. At some point, I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, sunlight was creeping through the blinds and I could hear movement upstairs. The slow shuffle of feet, the creak of the bathroom door, the sound of water running. She was up, and she had no idea what was waiting for her. I stood, stretching my stiff muscles before heading to the kitchen. I wasn't dramatic enough to pull the cliché move of making her breakfast like nothing had happened. No, that wasn't my style. But I did make coffee. Not for her. Just for me. I poured myself a cup, taking slow, deliberate sips as I heard her footsteps finally make their way down the stairs. She walked into the kitchen cautiously, like she wasn't sure what kind of battlefield she was stepping onto. She had changed into sweatpants and a loose hoodie, her usual lazy Sunday look. But there was nothing casual about the way she was watching me, waiting. I didn't look at her, just kept sipping my coffee, letting the silence stretch long enough for her to start squirming. Finally, she exhaled. Okay, are we going to talk about this or not? I smirked into my cup before finally setting it down. Talk about what? Her expression twitched, like she wasn't sure if I was messing with her or not. About last night, Otis. About everything. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. What about it? She let out an exasperated laugh, throwing up her hands. Oh, come on. What is this? Some kind of silent treatment? You're just going to pretend like you don't care. I shrugged. Pretty much. That threw her off. She blinked, clearly struggling to process what I had just said. What? So that's it? You're just fine with this now? Oh, I never said I was fine with it. I took another sip of coffee, watching as she shifted on her feet. I just said I'm not going to waste my energy on it. She narrowed her eyes. You're acting weird. I smirked. No, I'm acting exactly how I should have been acting this whole time. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Otis, just say whatever it is you're thinking. I tilted my head slightly, pretending to consider it. Then finally, I set my cup down and met her gaze head-on. All right, I said. Here's what I'm thinking. I let the words settle for a beat before continuing. You walked into this house last night and told me to my face that you were going on a date. Not, I'm leaving you. Not, I think we should talk about our marriage. No, you just announced it like it was a work meeting or a trip to the grocery store. Her expression flickered, but she didn't interrupt. And then, I continued. After telling me this, after dropping this little bomb on me, you walked out that door without a second thought. You went on your little date, smiling, laughing, climbing into some guy's car like our life together meant nothing to you. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. No, you wanted me to talk. Now you're going to listen. She shut her mouth. I nodded. Good, because here's the thing, Bernice. Last night, that was the first time in a long time that I really saw you. And you know what I realized? She didn't answer. So I answered for her. I don't love you anymore. Silence. For the first time since this whole thing started, I saw a real emotion cross her face. Not arrogance, not smugness, not irritation or annoyance. No, this was different. Because deep down, I think she had convinced herself that no matter what she did, no matter how far she pushed, I'd still be here. That I'd still be hers. But now she saw it. She had finally pushed too far. Her lips parted slightly. You don't mean that. I smiled. I do. Another beat of silence. Then what? What does that mean? Her voice was quieter now. I picked up my coffee again, taking another slow sip before answering. It means that this house, I gestured around us, it's not yours anymore. Her brow furrowed. What are you talking about? I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the screen a few times before turning it toward her. She squinted at it, confusion flickering across her face as she read. Then, her eyes widened. You sold the house? I smirked. Technically, we sold the house. Your name's on the paperwork, too. Remember? Signed a transfer this morning. She looked at me like I had just smacked her across the face. You can't do that. I did do that, I corrected. Because while you were out playing pretend with your new little boyfriend, I was making real moves. This house, the one you thought you could come back to whenever you wanted, it's gone. Her breathing had picked up now. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. Not my problem. She opened her mouth, then shut it again because she knew. She knew she had lost. I let out a slow breath, pushing off the counter. You've got 2 weeks to get your stuff out, I said, walking past her toward the front door. I'll be staying somewhere else until then. But after that, I pulled the door open, looking back at her one last time. You're on your own. And with that, I walked out, leaving her standing there, stunned, with nothing but the consequences of her own choices to keep her company. I didn't look back as I walked out the door. I didn't need to. I already knew what I would see. Bernice standing there, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, scrambling to process what had just happened. She had expected a fight, a breakdown, something dramatic, something she could twist into her own version of events where she was the victim and I was the bitter, angry husband who just couldn't handle the truth. But I didn't give her that. Instead, I had done the one thing she never saw coming. I had let her go. The morning air was crisp as I stepped outside, the kind that made everything feel sharper, more in focus. My car was parked in the driveway, but I wasn't in a rush to leave. I just stood there for a moment, breathing it all in. The house that was no longer ours. The life that was no longer mine. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt free. I climbed into the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel for a second before starting the engine. As I pulled away, I didn't feel regret. No second thoughts, no doubts clawing at the back of my mind. Just the quiet realization that I had been holding on to something that had been dead for a long time. It was time to bury it. I didn't go far. I had a plan. Sure, I had set things in motion, but there was still one last thing I needed to do before I could walk away from all of this for good. I pulled into a quiet parking lot, killing the engine. The place was empty, except for a few stray cars scattered around the edges. A gas station across the street buzzed with the occasional customer, but for the most part, it was just me, the morning sun creeping higher in the sky, and my own thoughts. I pulled out my phone. There was a number I had been avoiding for months now, sitting there in my contacts, untouched. It wasn't that I didn't want to call. It was that I hadn't known how to. But now there was nothing holding me back. I took a breath, then tapped the screen. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Well, damn. Look who finally remembered I exist. I huffed out a short laugh. Yeah, I know. It's been a while. You think? The voice on the other end let out an amused scoff. Last time I heard from you, you were too busy playing house to even grab a beer. Thought you went off and joined some monastery or something. I leaned back in my seat, shaking my head. Trust me, nothing that peaceful. There was a pause then. You good. That was the thing about old friends. The real ones. They didn't need details. They just knew. I let out a slow breath. Not yet, but I will be. Another pause. Then, just as casually as ever. Where you at? I'll bring the drinks. I smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. The bar wasn't anything fancy, just a small, dimly lit place on the edge of town that served cold beer and had a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the early 2000s. But it was familiar, comfortable, the kind of place where no one asked questions if you just needed to sit in silence with a drink in your hand. Wendell was already there when I walked in, leaning against the bar with a half-empty bottle in front of him. He glanced up when he saw me, then whistled low. Damn, Otis. You look like you just walked away from a car wreck. I snorted. Feels about right. I slid onto the stool next to him as he signaled the bartender for another round. The bottle landed in front of me with a soft clink, condensation rolling down the glass. I picked it up, taking a slow sip before setting it back down. Wendell waited a beat, then leaned in slightly. So, how bad was it? I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. Let's just say I'm officially done. His eyebrows shot up. Done. I nodded. House is sold. Bernice has 2 weeks to get her stuff and figure out whatever the hell she's going to do next. After that, I took another sip. She's not my problem anymore. He let out a low whistle. Damn. Never thought I'd see the day. I smirked. Yeah, well, neither did she. Wendell studied me for a moment, then chuckled, shaking his head. You know what? Good for you, man. Really. I mean, I could tell something was off for a while now, but I figured you'd just keep trying to fix it like you always do. That was the problem, I muttered. I kept trying to fix something that was never going to work. Silence stretched between us for a beat. Not uncomfortable, just reflective. Then Wendell grinned. All right, so what's next? That was the question, wasn't it? For so long, my entire world had revolved around her, around trying to be a good husband, trying to make things work, trying to be the man she wanted me to be. But now, I didn't have to be anything for anyone but me. I leaned back against the bar, letting out a slow breath. I don't know, I admitted. But for the first time in a long time, I'm looking forward to finding out. Wendell smirked, lifting his bottle. To new beginnings. I clinked my bottle against his. To new beginnings. And as I took that first sip, I realized something. I wasn't broken. I wasn't lost. I was free. And that was the best damn feeling in the world. The next morning, I woke up feeling different. Lighter. Not in the way people describe after some major revelation, but in the quiet way you notice when a weight you didn't even realize you were carrying is suddenly gone. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up with a list of worries running through my head. No overanalyzing Bernice's moods. No trying to anticipate what new complaint or criticism she'd throw my way. No sinking feeling in my gut that something was wrong. Because it was over. I rolled out of bed, Wendell's barely functional pull-out couch actually, and stretched, letting out a satisfied sigh. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, the smell of coffee wafting in from the kitchen. I followed it, finding Wendell already up, sitting at the counter, scrolling through his phone. He glanced up when he saw me and smirked. "Well, look who survived the night." I chuckled, rubbing the back of my neck. "Barely. That thing you call a couch should be illegal." Wendell snorted. "Hey, you're the one who needed a place to crash. If you wanted luxury, you should have kept the house." I shook my head, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "No way. That place was just a museum of a life I don't want anymore." I took a slow sip, savoring the warmth. "Besides, I've got better plans." Wendell raised an eyebrow. "Oh? You finally figured out what's next?" I nodded. "Yeah, I'm leaving." His eyes widened. "Leaving where?" I leaned against the counter, staring into my coffee. "Everywhere. I don't know yet, but I've spent so much of my life trying to keep something broken together. Trying to be the good husband, trying to make things work with someone who didn't even respect me. I think it's time I figure out who I am without all that." Wendell studied me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "Damn, that actually makes sense." I smirked. "You sound surprised." He laughed. "Well, yeah. I thought you'd spend the next 6 months moping around, drowning in regret." I took another sip of coffee, letting the silence stretch before answering. "Nah, she's not worth it." That was the real truth. For a long time, I thought losing Bernice would feel like losing a part of myself. But the more I looked back on our relationship, the more I realized I had already lost so much because of her. My peace, my confidence, my ability to trust in the life I was building. She had chipped away at all of it, piece by piece, and I had let her. But now I wasn't holding on to any of it anymore. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling through a list of cities, destinations, places I had always wanted to visit, but never had the chance to. New York, maybe. California. Why not? Hell, I might even go somewhere I couldn't pronounce just for the adventure of it. A slow grin spread across my face. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. I was only looking forward. I drained the last of my coffee, grabbed my keys, and clapped Wendell on the shoulder. "All right, man. Thanks for the crash pad. I'll send you a postcard." He chuckled. Yeah. Just don't get scammed by some resort scheme." I laughed, stepping toward the door. "No promises." And with that, I walked out into the morning sun, feeling the warmth on my face, the possibilities stretching out ahead of me. I wasn't Otis, the heartbroken husband. I wasn't Otis, the guy who got cheated on. I was just me, and that was enough.